The Lagos sun streamed through the bedroom window where Zara sat surrounded by fabric swatches, invitation samples, and two very opinionated grandmothers video calling from opposite sides of the world. The wedding must have a traditional Korean pyebaek ceremony, Grandmother Kang insisted from her screen, her voice firm despite the smile on her face. Ji-hoon will bow to elders, offer dates and chestnuts. This is our way. And we must have a proper Nigerian engagement ceremony, Zara's grandmother countered, from her own screen, equally determined. With palm wine, cola nuts, and family representatives. This is how we honor our ancestors. Zara looked between the two screens, then at the mountain of planning materials surrounding her. So we're doing both ceremonies, in two countries with two complete families traveling internationally, and somehow making this happen in 6 months? Both grandmothers nodded simultaneously, their first moment of agreement. Love is worth the complexity, Grandmother Kang said. Family is worth the journey, Zara's grandmother added. After they signed off, Zara dropped her head into her hands. Planning a cross-cultural wedding was proving more challenging than building the international dance program. At least with the program, she and Ji-hoon had made decisions together. But with the wedding, they were navigating expectations from dozens of family members, two distinct cultural traditions, and their own dreams of what they wanted their union to represent. Her phone buzzed. Ji-hoon. Rooftop. Now, emergency dance break needed. She smiled. Over the past year, they'd developed a code. Whenever the pressure of their increasingly public relationship became too much, whenever the expectations and opinions threatened to drown their own voices, they returned to what had started everything. Dance. The rooftop of Zara's apartment building had become their sanctuary. Ji-hoon had arranged for a small portable speaker system and a weather-resistant mat. Sometimes they practiced choreography for the program. Sometimes they just moved to whatever music matched their mood. They always found their center again. She found him already there, his jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, exposing the cloud, and wave tattoos on his forearm. The dragon on his neck caught the afternoon light as he stretched. Even after all this time, seeing him here, comfortable in his body and space, made her heart catch. "Rough morning?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "Your grandmother wants pyebaek? My grandmother wants an engagement ceremony. Your father has security concerns about Lagos. My father has questions about Seoul. Your mother sent a message through your father because she still doesn't feel comfortable talking to me directly." He silenced her with a kiss. Dance first, chaos later. They moved together to an Afrobeat track fused with Korean traditional instruments. One of their students had created it specifically for them. As they danced, Zara felt the tension leaving her shoulders. This was why she'd fallen in love with him. Not despite the complications, but because of how they navigated them together, how they kept returning to this movement, connection, truth. "I have an idea," Ji-hoon said as the song ended. "What if we stop trying to satisfy everyone and do what actually matters to us?" "That sounds revolutionary and terrifying," Zara replied. "Continue." 3 ceremonies. 1 in Seoul for my family, 1 in Lagos for yours, and 1 here in this city where we actually built our life together, for us and the community we created. Small, intimate, just the people who've been part of our actual journey. Zara stared at him. 3 weddings? Ji-hoon, planning one is already overwhelming. 3 ceremonies. 1 marriage, he corrected. The Seoul one can be traditional Korean, satisfying my grandmother and showing respect to my heritage. The Lagos one can be traditional Nigerian, honoring your family and culture. But here? Here we do something that's actually us. Fusion, dance, our students performed. Both cultures mixed into something new. That's either brilliant or insane. Probably both, he grinned. Like us? The planning that followed was indeed both brilliant and insane. Don Kong, surprisingly, became one of their strongest allies. His business connections and resources proved invaluable in coordinating international travel for dozens of family members. More than that, he seemed to have found purpose in supporting his son's happiness. "I spent years trying to make Ji-hoon fit my vision," he told Zara one afternoon as they reviewed security arrangements. "Now I see that his vision was bigger than mine all along. This wedding, these ceremonies, they're not just about two people. They're about showing what's possible when we stop forcing people into boxes." The first ceremony took place in Seoul on a crisp autumn morning. The traditional Korean wedding hall was elegant, with rich wood tones and paper screens. Zara wore a gorgeous haworth, the traditional Korean bridal robe in deep red and gold with intricate embroidery depicting phoenixes and flowers. Her braids were styled into an elaborate updo decorated with traditional ornaments and her own gold beads, creating a stunning fusion of African and Korean aesthetics. Ji-hoon wore a traditional Korean groom's hanbok in deep blue and gold, looking every bit the noble heir, but true to form, his tattoos were visible. The dragon on his neck, the geometric patterns on his hands, as he performed the traditional bows, the sleeve peeking from under his hanbok. A statement that tradition and individuality could coexist. The pyebaek ceremony was profound. As Ji-hoon and Zara bowed deeply to each set of elders, offering dates and chestnuts, symbolizing future children and prosperity, Grandmother Kong wept openly. When they bowed to Don Kang and his wife, the formidable Don's hands trembled as he accepted the ceremonial offering. "I thought I would never see this day," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "My son, confident and proud, chose his own path. Thank you for making him brave." But the moment that made Zara's heart overflow came when they bowed to her own parents, who had been included in the ceremony at Grandmother Kong's insistence. Professor Okonkwo and his wife, wearing borrowed Korean hanbok, sat in positions of honor. "In our family now," Grandmother Kang announced to the assembled guests, "we honor all parents, all cultures, all paths to love." The reception that followed was elegant and traditional, with Korean music, elaborate food, and formal toasts. Ji-hoon's extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins he'd rarely connected with before, approached throughout the evening. "You look happy," one aunt said simply. "I don't think I've ever seen you look this happy." "I am," Ji-hoon replied, his arm around Zara. "For the first time, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." 2 weeks later, they were in Lagos for the traditional Nigerian engagement ceremony. The heat was overwhelming, the noise even more so, but Ji-hoon had prepared. He wore noise-canceling headphones during the trip and brought sensory tools Zara had taught him to use. He'd learned his limits and how to advocate for them. The ceremony took place in the Okonkwo family compound, transformed with colorful decorations. A massive canopy in vibrant Nigerian fabrics provided shade. Traditional musicians played energetic rhythms. The air smelled of incredible food: jollof rice, suya, pounded yam, egusi soup. Dishes Zara had been teaching Ji-hoon to appreciate over months of gradually expanding his food tolerance. Zara wore a stunning Nigerian bridal outfit, a rich coral-colored lace iron and buba with intricate gold embroidery, an elaborate jewel head wrap, layers of coral beads and gold jewelry. She looked regal, powerful, unmistakably herself. Ji-hoon wore a traditional Nigerian agbada in deep purple with gold embroidery, the flowing robe making him look like royalty. His tattoos were fully visible, and he'd added a small new one on his right wrist. Zara's name in Yoruba script intertwined with Korean characters spelling out his name, a permanent symbol of their blended identity. The traditional ceremonies were complex. Ji-hoon had studied for weeks to understand each element. When it came time to present the bride price, he approached with a delegation that included both his father and hers, carrying symbolic items representing commitment and provision. Professor Okonkwo, playing his role as stern father, pretended to consider whether to accept. "This man, from far away with strange markings on his skin, why should we trust him with our daughter?" Don Kong, standing beside Ji-hoon, spoke up. "Because he sees her truly. because he honors her. Strength, because he makes her laugh and holds her when she cries, because he builds bridges where others see only walls. He paused, emotion clear, because that is what true love does. I know this now, because of them. The compound erupted in cheers. Professor Okonkwo's stern facade cracked into a wide smile as he formally accepted and welcomed Ji-hoon into the family. The celebration that followed was jubilant chaos. Music poured from speakers. People danced with wild abandon. Children ran everywhere. The noise level would have destroyed Ji-hoon a year ago. Now he danced alongside Zara's cousins, took breaks when needed, and returned to the celebration renewed. During a quieter moment, Zara's mother pulled them both aside. You know, when Zara first told us about you, I worried, not because of culture or color or any of that. I worried because long-distance love is hard, because building a life across such distance seemed impossible. And now? Ji-hoon asked. She smiled, touching both their cheeks. Now I see that you didn't build a life across distance. You built a bridge. And on that bridge, you created something entirely new. That's not just possible, that's beautiful. The third ceremony, their own creation, took place a month later in the European city where their journey had begun. They'd rented the ballroom where they'd first danced. Full circle. But this wasn't the elegant gala of that first night. They'd transformed the space into something uniquely theirs. Korean lanterns hung alongside African fabrics. Tables featured fusion cuisine, kimchi fried rice with Nigerian spices, bulgogi tacos with plantain, traditional Korean rice cakes shaped like Nigerian symbols. The guest list was intimate, their students, both grandmothers, immediate family, and the people who'd been present for their actual journey. Zara wore a dress she'd designed herself, a modern gown that incorporated elements of both cultures. The bodice featured Korean-style lines and closures with African print fabric. The skirt flowed with layers of both silk and traditional Nigerian lace. Her braids, adorned with both gold beads and small Korean ornaments, cascaded down her back. Ji-hoon wore a modern suit in deep navy, but the lining was made from Korean hanbok fabric, and the pocket square was African print matching Zara's dress. All his tattoos were visible, celebrated rather than hidden, but the ceremony itself was what made it special. Instead of traditional vows, they danced. They'd choreographed a piece that told their story. It began with them on opposite sides of the ballroom, Zara moving to Afrobeat rhythms, Ji-hoon to Korean traditional music. Separate, beautiful, but alone. Then their music began to blend. Slowly, they moved toward each other. The choreography incorporated traditional Korean dance elements and Nigerian movement styles, fusion and respect. When they met in the center, they danced together, not one style overtaking the other, but creating something entirely new, something that could only exist because they both brought their authentic selves. The audience was silent, mesmerized. Even the grandmothers who'd seen countless traditional ceremonies wept at the raw honesty of movement as language. When the dance ended, they stood in the exact spot where they'd first danced, now as partners in every sense. Ji-hoon spoke first. Zara, you taught me that being different isn't something to hide. You showed me that vulnerability is strength. You built a space where I could finally breathe. I promise to always create that space for you too, to honor your culture, your dreams, your truth, to dance with you through everything life brings. Zara's voice trembled with emotion. Ji-hoon, you taught me that love means seeing someone completely and choosing them anyway. You showed me that bridges are built with courage, patience, and willingness to meet in the middle. I promise to always meet you there, to honor your needs, your heritage, your authentic self, to keep dancing, always. They exchanged rings, custom designed with both Korean and Nigerian symbols, another fusion of their worlds. I now pronounce you partners in dance and in life, announced the officiant, one of their first students who'd gone on to become a dance therapist. You may kiss your forever dance partner. The kiss was tender, witnessed by the people who'd actually walked this journey with them. When they pulled apart, the ballroom erupted, not in polite applause, but in joyful chaos. Music started immediately. Their students rushed the dance floor. Both families mingled, dancing together, laughing together. Don Kong and Professor Okonkwo stood together, watching, unlikely friends united by their children. "Never thought I'd see the day," Professor Okonkwo said. "Which day?" Don Kong asked. "The day our children from opposite worlds would unite, or the day we'd be standing here as family?" "Both," Professor Okonkwo laughed. "Definitely both." Grandmother Kong and Zara's grandmother sat together at a table, communicating through a translation app and gestures, already planning visits. Later, as the reception continued, Ji-hoon and Zara slipped away to the studio. Their studio, the original location where he'd first asked her to teach him. They'd kept it even as the program expanded to multiple locations. This was their home base, their origin story. "Remember the first time you brought me here?" Ji-hoon asked, looking around the familiar space. "I was so nervous, so certain I'd fail." "And you were brave," Zara corrected. "Nervous, yes, but brave enough to try." "Only because you made it safe to try." He pulled her close. "Ready for the next adventure?" "What next adventure?" "Life, marriage, whatever comes, building more programs, maybe kids someday who'll be the most confused about their cultural identity, or the most—" "Blessed," Zara interrupted. "Two cultures, two languages, two rich heritages. That's not confusing, that's an abundance." "Abundance," he repeated, liking the word. "Yes, that's what we built. Not compromise, not either or. Abundance, both end." They danced in the empty studio, no music needed. After 3 years together, they moved in perfect synchronization, anticipating each other's movements, supporting each other's risks, creating something beautiful in the space between. A knock interrupted them. Don Kong stood at the door, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Am I interrupting?" "Never," Ji-hoon said, though Zara noticed his slight surprise. His father rarely came to the studio. Don Kong entered slowly, looking around. "I've never actually been here, to this space, where it all started." "Would you like the tour?" Zara offered. He nodded and she showed him around. The main studio space. The quiet room they'd added for students who needed sensory breaks. The wall is covered in photos of their students' achievements. The small office where they planned the curriculum. Don Kang stopped at the photo wall, studying each image. Students performing, families celebrating, young people find confidence through movement. "All this," he said quietly, "because my son said yes to one dance." "All this because you learned to let him," Zara said gently. That took courage, too. Don Kong turned to them, and for once the powerful Don looked vulnerable. "I wanted to give you both something, a wedding gift." He handed them an envelope. Inside were property deeds. "The building," he said. "This entire building. And the building next door. I've purchased them both. You own them now completely. No strings, no conditions. Your program, your vision, your space. Forever." Ji-hoon stared at the documents. "Father, this is—" "Overdue," Don Kang interrupted. "I spent years trying to force you into a life that didn't fit. This is me supporting the life you actually chose, the life that makes you happy." He paused, emotion clear. "The life that made you the man I always hoped you'd be, just not in the way I expected." Zara felt tears streaming down her face. Ji-hoon embraced his father, and Don Kong held his son tight. "Proud of you," Don Kong whispered. "So proud." After he left, Ji-hoon and Zara stood in their studio, now truly theirs, holding the deeds that represented not just property, but acceptance, support, transformation. "We did it," Zara said. "We actually did it." "We're doing it," Ji-hoon corrected. "This isn't an ending, it's barely a beginning." He was right. Over the next year, they expanded the program into the new building. They hired more instructors, served more students, and built more bridges. Young people from dozens of cultural backgrounds found home in their studios, learning that difference was power, that authentic self-expression was revolutionary, that movement could heal what words couldn't reach. They traveled constantly between Korea and Nigeria, maintaining connections with both families. The grandmothers video called weekly, now fast friends who'd learned each other's languages and shared recipes. Don Kang and Professor Okonkwo met quarterly, ostensibly for business, but really because they'd genuinely come to enjoy each other's company. And when Zara discovered she was pregnant 18 months after the weddings, both families erupted in joyful chaos. The baby, they decided not to find out the gender, would be the ultimate bridge, Korean and Nigerian, born in Europe, heir to multiple cultures, bound by none. "What will we teach them?" Ji-hoon asked one night, his hand on Zara's growing belly. "How do we help them navigate all these worlds?" "The same thing we're still learning," Zara said, "that you don't have to choose, that you can honor all your heritages, that identity is something you create, not something that's forced on you. And dancing," Ji-hoon added, "we definitely teach them dancing." "Obviously," Zara laughed, "that's non-negotiable." The baby arrived during a summer thunderstorm, dramatic entrance befitting a child born of two worlds, a daughter with Ji-hoon's eyes and Zara's smile, skin tone a beautiful blend, destined to navigate her complex heritage with parents who understood the journey. They named her Amara Sujin, Amara meaning grace in Igbo, Sujin meaning treasure in Korean. Grace and treasure, the perfect bridge. At her naming ceremony, which, naturally, happened 3 times in 3 countries, both grandmothers held her with equal devotion. Don Kong, who'd barely known how to hold his own son, cradled his granddaughter with tender awe. Professor Okonkwo sang traditional lullabies in Yoruba, while Ji-hoon learned the melodies to add Korean verses. "She'll be confused," one aunt worried. "All these cultures, languages, traditions. How will she know who she is?" "She'll know exactly who she is," Zara said firmly, holding her daughter close. "She's someone who gets to choose, someone who has abundance, not confusion, someone who proves that bridges don't just connect different sides. They create entirely new spaces where beautiful things can grow." Years passed. Amara grew, learning to dance before she could properly walk. The program expanded to 5 locations across 3 countries. Their original studio became a headquarters, a training center, a home for dozens of instructors spreading their philosophy worldwide. Ji-hoon continued to evolve, learning new ways to navigate his needs while still pushing his boundaries. Bad days still happened. Days when the world was too loud, too much, too overwhelming. But he'd built a life with space for those days, a partner who understood, a community that accepted, work that mattered. Zara had finally found the balance she'd always sought. The academic career her father had hoped for came in unexpected form. She published research on dance therapy and cultural identity that became required reading in multiple fields. But she never lost the hands-on work, the direct connection with students that had started everything. On Amara's 5th birthday, they threw a party at the original studio. Children from their program, Korean, Nigerian, European, and countless other backgrounds, ran wild, dancing together, creating their own fusion styles. Parents from different cultures chatted, bonded by their shared experience of raising children who didn't fit neat boxes. "Look at this," Zara said to Ji-hoon, watching the beautiful chaos. "Remember when it was just you and me in this space trying to figure out if one dance lesson could help? Now it's this," Ji-hoon said, gesturing to the community they'd built. "Hundreds of people, multiple countries, all because you saw someone who needed to be seen." "We saw each other," Zara corrected. "That's what made it work." That evening, after the party ended and Amara fell asleep surrounded by toys from 3 continents, Ji-hoon and Zara returned to the studio one more time. They did this monthly, returned to the space where it all began, danced together without audience or purpose, just connection. "Do you remember that first dance?" Zara asked as they moved together. "At the gala, when I asked if you wanted to dance?" "I remember being terrified." Ji-hoon admitted. Certain I'd fail. Certainly everyone was judging, but more terrified of spending another moment drowning in a life that didn't fit. And now? He pulled her closer, their movement perfectly synchronized after thousands of dances together. Now I know that the bravest thing I ever did was say yes, not just to that dance, but to everything that came after. The vulnerability, the cultural complexity, the public scrutiny, the hard conversations, all of it. No regrets? Not one. He kissed her forehead. Well, maybe one. I regret all the years I spent trying to be someone I wasn't before I found you, before I learned that being myself was enough. You would have figured it out eventually, Zara said. You're stronger than you know. Maybe, but it would have taken longer, and it wouldn't have been as beautiful. You didn't just help me find myself. You helped me build a life where being myself was possible. That's the gift. Not just acceptance, but space. Room to breathe and grow and become. They danced until the studio's lights automatically dimmed, signaling the late hour. Walking home through the quiet city streets, hand in hand, Zara thought about the journey. From one spontaneous dance to 3 weddings. From one anxious student to an international program. From 2 people from different worlds to a family that bridged them. What are you thinking? Ji-hoon asked, reading her contemplative mood. I'm thinking about that woman at our wedding, your aunt. The one who said she'd never seen you happy before. What about her? I wonder if she understands that it's reciprocal. You taught me about happiness too. About building a life that's authentic rather than expected. About the courage it takes to choose love across complications. Did I? Ji-hoon smiled. I thought I was just the anxious guy who needed dance lessons. You were never just anything, Zara said firmly. You were always exactly who you needed to be. Complex and tattooed and neurodivergent and brilliant and kind. All of it, together. We're quite the pair, Ji-hoon laughed. African and Korean, dance and structure. Spontaneous and planned. Warmth and careful consideration. Not opposites, Zara corrected. Complements. We don't complete each other. We're both already whole. We enhance each other, make room for each other, build something bigger together than either of us could build alone. They reached their apartment, the place they'd chosen together, decorated with pieces from both their heritages, full of photos documenting their journey. Amara was asleep in her room, watched over by Zara's mother, who was visiting for the month. The space was quiet, peaceful, unmistakably home. Ready for tomorrow? Ji-hoon asked. They were launching the program's newest initiative, scholarships for neurodivergent students who couldn't afford classes, funded by both the Kong Family Foundation and Nigerian sponsors Professor Okonkwo had connected them with. Ready for whatever comes, Zara replied, as long as we're dancing through it together. Always dancing, Ji-hoon agreed. And they would, through challenges and celebrations, through expansion and growing pains, through raising their daughter and probably more children, through aging parents and new programs, and whatever life brought. Always returning to the truth that had started everything. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is reach out your hand to someone who's drowning and ask simply, "Would you like to dance?" Sometimes saying yes to that question changes everything. Sometimes one dance becomes a lifetime. 20 years later, at the program's anniversary celebration, the original studio had been preserved as a museum and training center. Photos covered every wall, thousands of students, hundreds of success stories, dozens of instructors who'd trained under Ji-hoon and Zara's methodology and spread across the world. Amara, now 25 and running the program's expansion into South America, stood at a microphone addressing a crowd of hundreds. Beside her, her younger twin siblings, a brother and sister named Chidi Minjun and Ada Jiwon, representing both families, waited to perform. My parents' story is legendary in our family, Amara said, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who'd always known who she was. One dance at a gala changed everything, but what I think people miss in that story is that it wasn't magic, it was a choice. Every single day they chose to show up for each other, to honor each other's differences, to build bridges instead of walls. In the audience, Ji-hoon and Zara sat with both their families. Don Kong, now in his 70s and officially retired, held his wife's hand. Professor and Mrs. Okonkwo, also aging but still vibrant, beamed with pride. The grandmothers, both in their 90s and still video calling each other daily, despite living on the same continent now, sat side by side. They taught me that identity isn't about choosing sides, Amara continued. It's about embracing everything you are. I'm Nigerian and Korean, African and Asian. But I'm also just me, all of it together, creating something that could only exist because they had the courage to reach across differences. She gestured to her siblings. And now, a dance that tells their story, choreographed by the three of us, incorporating traditional movement from both cultures and creating something entirely new, just like they did. The twins performed beautifully. Ada's movements fluid and expressive like Zara's, Chidi's controlled and precise like Ji-hoon's. The choreography seamlessly blended Korean traditional dance with Nigerian movement styles, set to fusion music that honored both heritages while creating something transcendent. Watching his children dance, Ji-hoon felt tears streaming down his face. Zara squeezed his hand, her own eyes wet. "We did good," she whispered. "We did," he agreed. "We really did." After the performance, people swarmed them, former students, now adults with their own children, instructors teaching the methodology worldwide, young people just beginning their journeys, each one a testament to what was possible when you created space for authentic expression. "Mr. Ji-hoon!" A teenager approached nervously. "I just started in the program. I'm like you, autistic. And I was wondering..." The young person held up a permission form. "My parents need to understand better. Could you maybe talk to them?" Ji-hoon looked at Zara, who nodded encouragingly. "Of course. Bring them by my office hours tomorrow. We'll talk through it together." "Thank you," the teen said, relief evident. "Everyone says you understand, that you make it okay to be different." "Different isn't the problem," Ji-hoon said gently. "Different is just different. The problem is when the world doesn't make space for difference. Our job is creating that space for you and for everyone who comes after." Later, as the celebration wound down and their family gathered for dinner, Amara asked the question she'd asked before, but somehow felt more important now. "Mom, Dad, if you could go back to that night at the gala, knowing everything that would come after, all the challenges and complications, would you still do it? Would you still ask him to dance?" Zara and Ji-hoon looked at each other, that wordless communication they developed over decades. "Yes," they said simultaneously. "Every challenge was worth it," Zara added. "Every difficult conversation, every cultural complication, every moment of doubt. All of it led to this, to you three, to this program, to this family we built, to prove that love really can bridge anything if you're brave enough to keep showing up." "And the dancing helped," Ji-hoon added with a smile. "Never underestimate the power of dancing through life's challenges." Don Kong raised his glass. "To bridges, to have courage. To my son who taught me that strength comes in many forms, and to the woman who saw what I was too blind to see." Professor Okonkwo raised his glass as well. "To daughters who change the world, to sons-in-law who prove love transcends all boundaries, and to grandchildren who carry the best of all our worlds forward." "To dance," Grandmother Kang added. "To family," Zara's grandmother concluded. "To bridges," everyone said together. That night, after everyone had gone home and their children were asleep, Ji-hoon and Zara stood once more in the original studio. It was tradition now. Every major milestone, they returned to where it all began. 23 years, Zara said, since that first dance. "Best 23 years of my life," Ji-hoon replied. "Ready for the next 23? "And the 23 after that," Zara said. "However many we get, as long as we're dancing through them together." They danced in the quiet studio, no music needed. Two people who'd built a bridge between worlds and in the process created something entirely new. Not Korean or Nigerian, not African or Asian. Something that could only exist because they'd had the courage to reach across differences and create space for abundance. The music was in their movement. The story was about their connection. The future was in every student they'd taught, every bridge they'd built, every person who'd learned from their example that love, real, complicated, beautiful love, transcends every boundary we create. One dance had changed everything, but it was all the dances that came after. The daily choice to keep moving together, to keep creating space for each other, to keep building bridges that created a legacy. And somewhere in the universe, if such things are possible, the spirit of that first dance smiled, because it had done exactly what it was meant to do. Bring two drowning people to the surface where they could finally breathe, together, always together. Dancing. The end. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Afro-Korea Chronicles for more powerful stories where African depth meets Korean rhythm. Drop a comment telling us your favorite moment from Ji-hoon and Zara's complete journey, from that first anxious dance to building a family and legacy that spans continents. Your support means the world and helps us continue bringing these stories to life. Until next time, remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is reach out your hand and ask someone to dance.